to a slightly different background. I am aware that this space is very echoey, but this is what I have to work with, so we're just going for it. Apologies for the echoing. I didn't think I would have to film a video while I was back in the UK, but I'm here for a bit longer than expected. So you have a video from here, and you'll have a couple of videos whilst I'm here. I will try and do some more sort of vlog style videos so we don't have them all in this echoey background. So this video is because I went to the Book Blogger Awards at the London Book Fair last week. And I also went to one of the events that was organised by, wait for it, London Book and Screen Week, which tied in with the London Book Fair. They gave me this fabulous cushion to take away from the event, and also this Votes for Book sign, which was on their London Book Fair stand. And so I wanted to do a video showing you some footage from the Book Blogger Awards and from the event that I went to. So the Book Blogger Awards were set up. This is the first year for the UK Book Blogger Awards, and they were set up to recognise bloggers because they are such an important part of the book industry. And so there's 3 categories, a category for Bookstagrammer, category for Booktuber, and category for Book Blogger. They had lots of nominations, and then they had a shortlist which they shared at these awards. There was lots of other bloggers at the awards. I got to meet so many people, lots of other booktubers at the awards as well, which was fantastic. And so I will show you the footage from the Book Blogger Awards now.
Over 150 entries across the 3 categories, which were Book Blogger of the Year, Bookstagrammer of the Year, and Booktuber of the Year. And we wanted to say thanks so much to every blogger, booktuber and bookstagrammer who entered. The judging panel was hugely impressed with every single entry. You guys really are incredible. And thank you also to the fantastic judges, some of whom are with us today. They had a really tough decision on their hands. The judges were Raifa Rafiq, who hosts Mostly Lit podcast, Rosie Beaumont-Thomas, the events manager at Waterstones Tottenham Court Road, Paul Black, PR director for Anderson Press, and Sean Kane, book site editor at The Guardian. Thank you all. And actually, just so you know who I am and why I'm here, my name is Katie Morris and I'm the event manager for the London Book Fair. But now, I'm really excited to welcome Emma Gannon, the fabulous award-winning author and broadcaster who was recently included in the Forbes 30 Under 30 Europe. Emma's going to present the winners today. For those of you who don't know, Emma's first book, Control-Alt-Delete, came out in 2016 with Ebury, and her second book, The Multi-Hyphen Method, Work Less, Create More, and Design a Career That Works for You, comes out with Hoddit at the end of May. So before we get into the business of the awards, please welcome Emma, who's going to tell us a bit about the wonderful world of blogging.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I've been so excited about this all day. I love that there's a blog kind of category for book bloggers specifically at the London Book Fair. I think it's really putting it on the map, even though it has been for quite a few years, as we all know. I guess I straddle, writing books, but also I'm a blogger myself. I started my blog in 2009, I think. And I feel like a lot of you here have worked so hard on really growing something that is a real space that you own on the internet, and you've made an amazing community of people. I must say that kind of straddling both, when my first book came out 2 years ago, it was really the book bloggers that kind of put it on the map and actually kind of got it out there, and I can't tell you how grateful I am for that support. It means so much to authors, more than you probably know. And also, it's such an amazing community to be a part of. I feel a part of it kind of as a blogger myself. And I just love that today is all about kind of giving out those awards for what you've done. Putting it a bit more on the map. But yeah, I think what's been so amazing for me as well is I know that in this kind of climate, a lot of people say how kind of bad the internet is and how we can't, we need to get off it a bit more. But actually, it's those like late night Twitter chats, and it's the comments that everyone leaves on each other's blogs, and it's all of that. It really makes a difference, I think. And there's friendships that have been made, and it's amazing. So just to say thank you as an author and as a blogger for what you do. And I think we're gonna start kicking it off. Yeah, thank you.
Okie dokie, thanks so much, Emma. Right, now we'll crack on with the awards. If you are a winner, please do come up to the front. We'd love to take your photo, and Emma has an award to present. So let's look at the shortlist and reveal the winners. So, first up, Bookstagrammer of the Year. And the shortlist is Juliet's Library by Juliet Tripuri from the UK, The Guy with the Book by Farouk Nassim from Saudi Arabia, and The Rustic Window by Cicely Ford from the USA. And Emma's going to come over and tell us who the winner is.
This literally feels like the Oscars. I hope it's the right one. No, it is. So this winner, the judges praised how the Instagram account reflects everything a bookstagram should be. Its wonderful blend of aesthetically pleasing images and obvious sophistication. And the winner is The Guy with the Book.
Unfortunately, Farouk couldn't be with us today, but Beth Panini is accepting on his behalf.
Obviously not Farouk. I couldn't be more different than Farouk, actually. We're different sex, different nationality, different age group, different religion, different ethnicity. I could go on and on. But Farouk and I met a couple of years ago. We started Bookstagram at around the same time, and we immediately hit it off. And we've just been friends ever since. We've done book readings together, we've shared loads of jokes, we have had lots of different reading experiences. And I would say, just to mention what Emma said, there's so much about the negativity about social media, but I think the ability to connect with people across the world who you never would have been able to meet and cut across all the things that divide us and be united in something like the love of books is just only a great positive. So, Farouk, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up is the Booktuber of the Year, and here's the shortlist. Jen Campbell from the UK, Lauren Whitehead for Reads and Daydreams from the UK, and Simon Savage for Savage Reads from the UK. Emma's going to tell us who the winner is.
So the judging panel were really impressed with the high quality of this vlog, the enthusiasm, the energy, the professionalism that jumps off the screen. You can't help but be entertained and inspired by this booktuber. The range of books covered were impressively comprehensive and everything was beautifully framed. So the winner is Reads and Daydreams.
Congratulations, unfortunately Laura couldn't be here today, but please welcome Ashley Ross, who will collect the award on Laura's behalf. Okay, and last but not least, we're delighted to announce the shortlist for the Book Blogger of the Year. The shortlist for this is Chouette from France, The Literary Edit from Australia, and Queen of Contemporary from the UK. Emma, back to you.
This is so much fun giving out awards. I just want to do this all day. So the judges really loved the wonderful aesthetic of this blog and how it inscribes the book into day-to-day life. The professionalism of this blog shone through with fresh, enthusiastic approaches, and the writing is clear, concise, and candid. This really is a best-in-class book blog and an example to us all and inspiring bloggers. And the winner is the literary edit.
Last week, honey, he's so vain, yeah, he been loving himself on the Kim, yeah. I'm like, boy, stop, run that back. Goddamn you, father, can you play that sax? Hard ass thing, Mr. Let's say you better play that sax. Give it to me. Last week, honey, he's so vain, yeah, he been loving himself on the Kim,
Well done,
yeah.
Lucy. So congratulations to all our winners, and thanks again, Emma, and all of you for joining us at the inaugural Book Blog Awards today. And it wouldn't be an awards ceremony without a celebration, so do please follow us over to the Rose Garden at the Oval Office for a special drinks reception. Thanks everyone for coming.
And then the other event that I went to was a special screening of Suffragette, because obviously this year is the 100-year anniversary of some women in the UK getting the right to vote. And so they were showing a special screening of Suffragette with at Soho House in London, which their screening room is amazing. The kind of video footage doesn't really do it justice because it was very low lighting in there, so I'm hoping that just some of the clips that I got, you'll be able to listen to the speakers talking, because it was an amazing event full of lots of amazing speakers. So the people that they had speaking at the panel beforehand were Dame Helen Pankhurst. I've got my list here so I don't forget anyone. Dame Helen Pankhurst, who is the great granddaughter of Emmeline Pankhurst, who's obviously a massive name in the suffragette movement. Then we had Ray from Mostly Lit podcast. I will link her podcast down below because I have downloaded some of it. And the duty chaplain from Westminster Abbey and novelist Marie Elsa Bragg, and she talked about, well, you'll see what she talked about. So it was great to have these women talking and enlightening us on some of the things that they've written about and spoken about before the screening of Suffragette the movie. So I've got some of that footage here, which I will leave you with. As I say, they were great. They were kind enough to give me this Vote for Book sign, which I absolutely love because I'd seen their stand at the London Book Fair, absolutely loved it. And then the cushion, which I'll just show you again now because it's amazing, and the cover zips off so I don't have to take the whole cushion back to Denver with me. London Book and Screen Week, which was in collaboration with London Book Fair. They had lots of other events during the week as well, but I couldn't go to any of them apart from this one. There was a fab screening with Jojo Moyes of Me Before You, which I actually saw for the first time, Me Before You, with Jojo Moyes when it was first released, so that was really cool. So I'm sure that event was fantastic as well. But yes, I will leave you with footage of those speakers. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. As I say, I will try and have more vlog style footage for you, so make sure you're subscribed so that that lands in your subscription feed. Thank you, bye.
In the UK, she is a public speaker and writer on feminist issues. Helen is the great-granddaughter, so nice that I got a lectern, great-granddaughter of Emmeline Pankhurst, and now my things are all in a muddle. I'm terribly sorry. Here we are. Bear with me. It's not going terribly well. Here we are. In fact, you could probably say who you are. It might be easier. I'm granddaughter of Sylvia Pankhurst, leaders of the British suffragette movement. Her new book, Deeds Not Words, can you hold it up? Thank you. And it's on sale at the back, combines historical insight with inspiring argument to reveal how far women have come since the suffragettes, how far we still have to go, and how we might get there. Helen is also a consultant on the film we're about to see, and I want you all to see whether or not you can spot her and her daughter in a cameo role. Apparently your daughter had a speaking
One word, which was
Right.
hello.
Right, I think I am going to get myself into a lovely muddle here. Maria Sabrag is part French, part Cumbrian, and when I first read it I thought Canadian, but no, part French, part Cumbrian, and is a writer, lecturer, ordained Anglican priest, Jesuit spiritual director, and a duty chaplain of Westminster Abbey. She's a member of the Fawcett Society, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, and Watch Parliament, a small group who work alongside women's issues within the church. Thank you. No, I need that one. Very much indeed. Yes, thank you very much indeed. Her debut novel, Towards Melbreak, have you got it there, or shall I hold it up? As you can see, this is a huge. Here we are. On sale at the back. Is published by Chatto and Windus. Raifa Rafiq, last but by no means least, is a trainee solicitor at one of the leading international law firms in the UK. It's always rather mysterious. I never find out which one it is, Raifa.
I would never tell you.
Okay. She's a contributor to Galdem, have I said that correctly? And hosts popular literature and culture podcast, Mostly Lit, which was named iTunes Best Podcast for 2016. And is one of the podcasts that will blow your mind by the BBC. An avid reader and writer, Raifa is a proud black Muslim woman who embraces each and every one of her intersections. Is that correct, Raifa? That is absolutely right. So, without further ado, I'm going to ask Helen to address the topic of the day.
Lovely, thanks so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Including down at the back.
We can.
Brilliant. So I've got about 5 minutes to summarise 100 years of history and to summarise a rather big book. But let me say a few words and use the 5 minutes to maximum effect. The way the book is structured is I look back first to say, how did we get to the vote? How did we get to that first symbolic 1918 right for some women to get the vote? And it's looking at the personal heritage and my assessment of the influence of the suffragettes well beyond that initial vote. The second part of the book looks at how things have changed or not in the last 100 years, and I look at some key areas. And then the third part of the book is looking forwards to saying, well, what do we want to happen now? How far have we got, in terms of what, not how far have we got, what do we want to see happen in the next 10 years? So let's just take the first two aspects of that. First, how did we get to 1918 and the role of the suffragette movement? A few key points. I'd say firstly that, let me hands up if you know about the suffragists. Okay, thanks. Hands up if you know about suffragettes. See, that's what quite interesting, because I don't know whether you can see around you those people that put their hands up, but basically most people know about the suffragettes and fewer put their hands up around the suffragettes. And the suffragettes have kind of gained the media attention. They were the more radical group, they used more militant, active action compared to the suffragists, who were constitutional in their approach. However, having made that distinction between the two, in fact, there were a lot of interactions between the two. Many individual women were involved in both. They came in and out of the organisations, and an individual woman's political arc changed over time. And you'll see that a lot in the film, that the point at which an individual woman calls herself a suffragette depends on what happens to her. And even 2/3 of the way through the film, Maud, the main character, still saying, I'm not a suffragette. And I think that's very true to what happened at the time. Another point I'd highlight is that just like this artificial distinction between the suffragists and the suffragettes, there were many other organisations that were involved, so it's much more complicated as a story, and many professional organisations involved. And likewise, the movement was actually much more, to use a modern term, intersectional than we give it credence for. So in the film you see middle class, upper class, working class women. It's based in London, but actually many women up and down the country, north, south, east, west. For once, very, very unusually at the time, you had women of different ages, different class backgrounds, different all sorts, sexuality. Many women, this was the beginnings of lesbian women being out and involved and expressive of their sexuality. You had a few women of colour, not many. The UK was very white at the time. you had at least one disabled woman. So here is the suffragette movement that has been simplified and caricatured as being white middle class, when in fact the reality was much more complicated. Then I don't want to, last point really, on maybe two more points on this past. Firstly, I don't want to give it too much of a rose-tinted spectacle vision of it. It was complicated as a movement, many schisms. You get a glimpse of that in the film. And within my own family, there are interesting differences of opinion. So much so that the four main characters are actually buried in different continents. How far can you take your differences? So Emmeline, my great-grandmother, is buried in the UK. Christabel, her oldest daughter, is buried in the States. Sylvia, my grandmother, is buried in Ethiopia. And Adela is buried in Australia. They had many different opinions which are still relevant today in terms of how you campaign. So, for example, do you go for incremental change, you just get it for some women, the vote, or do you go for full change? Do you really want this to be about absolute change? Still relevant today in terms of how you campaign. Do you align to parties that are more like yours, or do you keep a distance from party politics because they are not, in essence, party politics does not represent your views as a woman? Do you use more active direct action type changes, or do you campaign for democratic change? Many other issues which I could bring into, but very limited time, so I'll leave it at that. But what I wanted to highlight was, in that movement, you see very interesting schisms that are still relevant today. Final point, it was not just about legal change, it was not just about institutional change. It was fundamentally about women having agency, demanding more of themselves, and it was also change in terms of social norms, so changing society's views about what women could do for themselves. And I think those factors are still relevant today. So if we look at how much things have changed over time, again, I'll only give it two minutes. Have I got 2 minutes still?
You've got about 2 seconds.
2 seconds. 2 seconds. I look at politics, things have changed, but not that much. Second chapter is called Money, and it's about women at work and wealth. Many changes, but at the end of the day, it's 100 years, so still not as far as we would have wanted to. Third chapter is called Identity. It's women in the personal space, their families, their sense of self, their health. Changes, but still, hang on, it's 100 years. Fourth is on violence, and that is the one area where I feel we've progressed the least, and it's the one area that infects women's lives in every other sphere. Fifth chapter is on culture, and there I think we've achieved so much, including having a film produced by, directed by, script by, main characters are women, really important changes. This whole event speaks to how much that cultural sphere has changed. I could say a lot more, I don't have the time, so just leave it at that. So much has changed, so much still to do.
So I joined the church 15 years ago, and I was very aware I was joining a church which had only just allowed female priests, and we were only allowed to be priests if we had male bishops, so that we would still be led by men. And there were not many women priests. The church was exempt from the 67 Sexual Discrimination Act. So I was joining something where I would be allowed to, legally, be allowed to ask the room, to leave the room, and there was nothing I could do about it compared to my colleagues who were lawyers and doing other things. So I was very aware that I was asking a question about being a female priest, not just a priest, and that would be part of what I was going to be doing. When I was training, I had my first placement. And just to give you a small impression of what it was like, I was asked to cut my hair into short back and sides. We were to wear men's black suits. In the churches that I worked in, which is a high Anglo-Catholic church, because I love ritual, we sing the gospel, and we sing beautiful old prayers that have poetry in them, and to my mind allow a lot of space so that you don't have an oppressive dogma to it. But there I was, and I was asked not to sing the gospel, even though I was in training and should have done, because a woman's voice doesn't have the gravitas or the authority of the real message of the Bible. So I became extremely grateful to a generation of women who many of my friends felt very separate from. Generations of your grandmother and great-grandmother. I was alongside them and I was experiencing the disdain, and really disdain, from many men who really would look at me as if I was disgusting as a woman. So when I went to get ordained, I was ordained at St Paul's. I was the only woman who was ordained to the inner city because, having a bit of a feisty Cumbrian background, I decided to go where no women had gone, and leave hopefully a bit of legacy for the young women who might be coming after me. So I was the only woman ordained to the London area. The London area was notoriously against women, and I got a job in an area where I knew all the men were against women priests, with the bishop in the area which was against women priests, and that's where I chose to work. And it was unbelievably hard. Just to feel hatred is very hard. But I knew that many women before me had felt that just to be able to get a vote, just to be able to be heard at all, and there were many women around the world who were also facing that, just as I was. So, in my ordination, I had a choice of what to do. I did not cut my hair off, and I didn't wear a man's suit, though I had to wear a man's shirt because there were no women's shirt made at that time. But me and my great Auntie Margaret, up north, got some material, and I sat down and asked myself, what female archetype do I have? Because I don't have an idea of a female priest. Even in my unconscious, I have the idea of a male priest when I think of it. So I have to work out what that is for me. And the women that I remembered so strongly were the women in the suffragette movement. The idea of being able to speak and be heard with integrity. So we got some long black material and made myself a black skirt, found a waistcoat in Oxfam, and put on a man's shirt, rolled my hair up in a bun, and went to sleep.
And on the weekends, I host a podcast called Mostly Lit. And Mostly Lit is a podcast that came about, I guess, from a frustration of voices not being particularly heard. When we look at the literary world per se, all those voices seem quite the same, and there are certain people, black Muslim women like myself, who never picked up a book when they were young that saw themselves represented. And so I guess there are two limbs in what I'll touch on. The first part would be with regards to intersectionality and feminism. Now, when I was younger, I remember somebody asked me, Rafa, are you a feminist? And I was like, what's that? Oh, do you believe in like the rights of women? I was like, well, yeah, of course. And so I grew up my whole life thinking, of course I'm a feminist. But in the media, when I saw feminism represented, how it looked like to me, I thought, could I be a part of this movement? Because there are so many things that I battle with, and so many things that my friends, my black women friends battle with, that are not portrayed and are not given a voice to. And I had to do a lot of reading and a lot of research, and I realized, no, feminism does include me. It's just not shown that it includes me. And so Mostly Lit is taking voices of the underrepresented, the people who cannot speak per se, and just putting them out there so that we can talk about literature and books in a way that is very inclusive. And I think that is something that everything should be. A lot of the times it's almost like you have to, as a black Muslim woman, you have to pick the headline to support. In the news you'll see something pertaining to Islam and you're like, oh crap, so in this instance am I Muslim, or can I just be a black woman? and then you see something pertaining to women, and you're thinking, okay, well, I'm totally in support of this. But how is my faith and my race embedded into this? And so I think what needs to happen is that everybody's intersectionalities must be involved when we talk about feminism, so that when we talk about women, we're talking about women in various cultures, women from various religions, women from various sexual orientations, women from the different way in which they look. Like, it needs to be able to encompass everybody, and we need to do that in a way that is informed. So many times you read something and you see something that only looks at a certain way of living, and I think if we can do that, then it will just be a damn good day for feminism. I think the next part is with regards to representation. I wrote an article recently about how Muslim women are represented. Now, my whole life in the media, Muslim women were these women who were oppressed. They were under the rule of their father in the home. They weren't allowed to go out. They were forced into marriages. And that simply wasn't my childhood. And so when I'd look out, I'd think, what arranged marriage? Like, I'm going to fall in love, mate. And it's just absolutely bizarre that these stereotypes exist, because they do nothing but inform the idea, and then you go out into the world thinking that you are against the grain and you're absolutely abnormal. And so if we get representation that is accurate, that is diverse, that is informed, it allows allows a young girl like myself to open up a magazine and to see herself represented, and that informs her confidence, it informs her self-esteem, it informs the ambitions that she has of herself. I think we're very much moving forward right now in regards to, if I go on Instagram, not only am I oppressed, but now I'm also a makeup guru. So we're definitely moving forward, but I think it needs to be a faster change. So as a black Muslim woman, I shouldn't be successful because I'm defying stereotypes. My absolute normal should be success in of itself. So that's me.
Thank you. That's a very good and quick canter through 100 years and also more recent experiences. But just before we go into the screening, I think it'd be really interesting to look at the next decade. And I know, Helen, you've got a reason for looking at it in terms of a decade and our hopes and dreams. Just one thing each.
So a decade would take us to 2028, which take us to the centenary of equal franchise. So we know that first act 100 years ago only gave the vote to older, wealthier women. They had to wait 10 years, so we have 10 years. And my question really to us is, what do we want to do with that decade of action? We've had decades in the past, the UN used that terminology, but we have 10 years. What do we want to do with it? And I would say that just like that point that you were making earlier, which is that we can all make a difference through our small acts, through our quiet determination that we will be part of change, knowing that we've had behind us the support of, we're on the shoulders of others. And for me, the change, I explained that I think violence against women is the one area that if you look at the different aspects of women's lives, it's violence against women which keeps pulling us back. It's the area where there's been the least progress. But I think that it's not a sectoral solution. I think the solution is around us taking charge of social norms and calling out inequality and injustice and prejudice wherever we see it. And the power of that is that it means that we can all make a difference. And in day-to-day, small acts, it's something that we can all do.